recorded. Okay. So happy New Year, everybody. And as always, for the after a break, give yourself a little bit of time to settle in. It's a good opportunity, I think, to go back to little basic ideas and just revisit them. I think over something like the Christmas period, we all sort of move away from the practice of a little bit. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It reminds us why we're practicing. But just standing, go nice and easily. Don't force yourself into any posture or any movement. But think, your feet hip width apart, weight a little bit forwards in your feet. Just trying to release some of the tightness and stiffness in, particularly around your hips, legs, and knees, so that we begin to appreciate what the postures offer, this sense of allowing your weight to sink down, rooting down, dropping your center of gravity. Different ways we can think of that. We'll start to look at those, but just to warm up a little bit and to get ourselves moving, turning gently from the center of your body. So hips and waist, the areas I'm talking about there, we move there, start to feel the movement spread into the rest of the body. As always, it's never a purely physical action. We want to be able to bring our attention into a gentle focus, a broad awareness of what is happening within our body, taking a step back from whatever else is going on in our lives. But again, also recognizing that coming out of a holiday period, as like the one we've just been through, Christmas and New Year, we get out of routines and we lose some of that sharpness, that clarity. Not so long ago, I was waking up in the morning wondering what day it was, let alone what I had to do that day, if I had to do anything. So again, we give ourselves a little bit of space, a little bit of time to recover all of that. To remember really why we do that, why we want that clarity, what it brings us, what it offers us. So these three aspects of Tai Chi, sometimes described as the three treasures: body, mind, movement, or energy. Just starting to harmonize again within our movements. Noticing areas that feel a bit tight, a bit stiff, blocked, for one reason or another. Not dwelling on those areas. That's generally not helpful. But maybe a little bit of thinking, if your back's a bit stiff, have you got a posture that takes some of the pressure off your back, for instance? Is it possible just to change the posture a little bit? That may take a few moments to do that. Is it better just to allow your body to settle, to effectively remember from a couple of weeks back what it was like to be in this posture, to remind yourself of that? Looking for a feeling within the body, particularly within that central area of our bodies, of spaciousness, so that we're not fighting against ourselves simply to move. Just recognizing what space is there and not attempting to sort of push against the boundaries of that space, just allowing the movement to gradually erode those boundaries, to dissolve those boundaries. Sometimes the recollection of how these things have felt for us in the past can be an encouragement for our bodies to find that again. So that becomes part of our tension. You notice that you slip into a nice steady rhythm. Sometimes it can take a while for your body to find that rhythm, to settle into it. But as you do, sense of resonance can develop, so that resonance leads us to an awareness of our whole body as one unit rather than separate aspect with a leg down there, an arm up there, or something. These details of posture and so on and so forth are the ABC, the basic vocabulary of practicing Tai Chi. They're really the things that we're practicing to develop. And it becomes more challenging with the more complex exercises that we do. Okay. But that's a useful thing because it's quite challenging to maintain these qualities in our daily life with all the things that sort of seem to get in the way. But initially, finding them again in a fairly simple exercise like this one is a, well, really, for me at least, is a daily practice. As I begin to feel that I'm moving, as I begin to get that sense of spaciousness, both my body and in my mind, as my thoughts settle a little bit, the various things going on in my lives, the details of my life kind of take a back seat for a while. These are things that I would like to be able to maintain to a degree. We learn to take these qualities into those details, into the different movements, the exercises, the forms and practices that are associated with Tai Chi. And that is always a challenge, I think. Turn your hands palm up and just raise your arms a little. Try not to stiffen up in your shoulders or your upper back. Then just letting your hands drop down. Now put one foot forwards. Have you stepped into an appropriate stance? Want to keep the width of our step. And then you can see the background between my legs, whereas here you can't. This doesn't give me the stability that I need, the foundation that I need. And just transferring your weight forwards and backwards. As your centre turn, noting which way your centre's turning. The most natural way for the centre to turn is towards the direction that your feet are pointing. But there may be reasons why that isn't the case. But if you're a bit tight, say in your back hip, your body may just automatically change the other way. So don't force yourself into a particular direction. If you're not going in what I just described as the more natural way, just try and have a sense of why that is for the moment. And again, trying to develop the rhythm of the movement and building it from your feet. So forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. This is an important thing to note, the significance of our legs and our feet and the transfer of our weight are things that are easily lost. We seem to be hardwired into a greater awareness of what's going on in the upper part of our body, particularly our hands and our arms. It's quite natural for us, I think. So making a particular effort to feel what's going on in your legs, in your feet. How does it feel for your weight to transfer one foot to another? And then with your other foot forwards. So maybe get a sense of moving from the ground beneath us, sense of the energy that can build when we do that. Not an isolated energy. It's not, just about your fingers tingling or your face getting warm or something like that, but rather this sense that your whole body, again, as one unit, moves from the ground very smoothly. Okay, then just give your legs a little bit of a shake. And remember, of course, that the physical side of this means that we may have gone a little bit out of muscular conditioning over the period, depends on what we've been doing, but mostly we probably haven't been practicing. I certainly haven't been teaching over that time, so I haven't had the same kind of physical discipline. I dare say, but by the end of the day, my legs will be aching somewhat. That's quite normal. But you want to go nice and easily. You don't want to strain. So again, standing with your feet hip width apart, toes pointing forwards as much as possible. We have some leeway here, by the way. So we could have our feet slightly turned out if that's more comfortable. And the width of the step could be measured from the outside of your foot or anywhere up to the inside of your foot. So you have a little bit of kind of flexibility there. And we find this in different Tai Chi styles. I think it's really a reflection of different body form. For me, the slightly wider stance works better. The reason we take the stance is because if we stand like this, it's a bit like standing on top of a pole or on a very narrow path or something like that. It's just very, very hard to actually maintain a sense of stability and a sense of calmness and settling that is naturally associated with that. And from this position, just begin to gently rock your weight forwards and backwards in your feet. So you feel your weight moving, and that is going to happen. When you go too far, of course, I go forwards to my toes. I go a little bit further. Now gravity's pulling me over. So as we move forwards and backwards, see if you can just pick up on the various responses in your body, wherever you happen to feel them, and that can be very personal. At what point, excuse me, at what point do you feel there's a sense of tightening, a sense of gripping in parts of your body? If I do this here, if you imagine that pole going up to the middle of my body, this is what's going on. I don't want to, for instance, bend in my hips and then back like this. I want to feel that this line, this imaginary line through my body is my kind of reference point. So when I go forwards, I go to about here, I reach the point where my weight's bearing down through the balls of my feet, what I feel is that there's quite a strong feeling in the muscles at the front of my thighs and my calves in particular, really. They're not tight, but if I go any further, they'll start to grip. When I go back again, much more in the thigh muscles. So there's this movement of extension and contraction of muscles taking a little bit more of the load, shall we say. And you might feel it somewhere else, but see if you can identify where and come to a position where that feeling of a pull. So I want to feel that sense of my calf muscles working and my thigh muscles working have reached some kind of equilibrium. And this brings me to a point of equilibrium, a point where I'm upright and in line with the pull of gravity. In theory, I can find a position for this pole where it's completely in line with the pull of gravity, and it wouldn't do that in theory. So this is a theoretical point rather than a fixed point, but gradually coming into recovering this feeling of being in line with the pull of gravity, this major force that acts on the body. And if I show you from the side, ideally I want my weight a little bit forwards, just allowing my hips to drop back. It's a feeling of releasing, like holding your fingers tight in a clenched fist, and then just letting them ease out a little bit. And that feeling of releasing allows my hips to sink. I sometimes have the image that my pelvis is hanging from my spine, like a bucket hangs from a rope in a well. And this allows my center of gravity to drop and starts to take some of the pressure of holding myself up away from shoulders, chest, back, stronger in the legs. So I sense the effort being distributed more through the whole of my body. See if you can begin to feel the significance of your legs supporting you, of course. You also want to try and feel that your back supports the front of your body. Try not to pull your belly in. Try and get away from the idea you somehow have to hold your chest up, hold a shape. Just let the natural structures of your body come into play. And a really important structure is going to be your skeleton, which does actually support you from within and supports the shape of your body. And then just letting your hips drop back a little bit more, feeling the point at which your legs start to push you up quite gently, push up to that top position, and then yield into the pull of gravity. So we have two directions of movement. One is gravity pulling us down. The other is the resilience, springiness in our legs pushing us up. And we're moving between those two. As you push up, gradually the pull of gravity overtakes the momentum, the energy pushing you up, and starts to pull you down. And then it works the other way. Your legs build up and then they start to push you off. So this is a very basic pattern of movement, pattern of energy moving through our bodies. One that we want to maintain for all of the movements. There's many forms of energy within the body that are used, begin to come into harmony. But this very kinetic energy, I feel, is very fundamental to Tai Chi. Body expanding, contracting. Feel what's happening in your belly, chest, and your back. Bring your hands around as though you're cradling the ball. Push up and let the expansion in your upper body push your elbows out, That will draw your hands up, and as though you've got your hands on top of the ball and pressing down. Imagine you're doing this in water. So if we're in a swimming pool and we want to push a ball down into the water, we drop down on the balls. We don't just use our arms. So this is quite challenging because, again, we do tend to transfer our attention much more fully to our arms and our hands. So again, pay particular attention to what's happening in your feet, your knees, your hips. This exercise is called rooting down. Rooting down is a term that we use to describe this yielding to the pull of gravity, the dropping of our center of gravity, which is very important for our general stability and to take some of the effort of maintaining a posture away from the upper part of our body. So that allows for a much freer, much more fluid movement in the upper part of the body. That sense of spaciousness gradually spreading out from the center. It's also very much a process which initiates movement. A bit like if you ride a bicycle, the first thing you do is you push down on the pedals. And that gets you moving. So rooting down is both a physical quality, if you like to think of it like that, encouraging good posture, stability, but also, if you like, an energetic quality that allows us to generate a sense of movement, a sense of energy that pervades the whole of the body. So a key concept. Recognizing again the requirements of conditioning in your body. You may find that your legs have started to shake or stiffen up a little bit. This time, same action in your legs and your hips, but turn your hands out. This time, your arms spreading out a bit in the exercise, the wild goose. So the basic dynamic quality is the same, the movement coming from the ground, coming from through your legs and so on. But this is a movement that has a very strong image. And we can, if it's a good image for you, which it might not be, but if it's an image that works for you, may convey a quality, and we can begin to understand and appreciate how imagery can have such an influence on our body physically. It has to be the correct image. We have to be able to sustain that image. So once again, the aspect of our minds maintaining that image, you may find that you drifted off a little bit. It's quite common for that to happen. You still have a sense of, for instance, moving through water, or have those thoughts that had settled into the background somehow kind of pushed in and got in the way. If they have, you just bring your attention back very gently to your body, the various aspects of movement and posture that we're working with. And then changing again, hands crossing in front of your belly, pushing up, parting the clouds, an expansive movement back down to the ground. Try not to feel that as your thoughts drift away that it's some kind of massive failure. I think this is very common. I mean, certainly for me, it happens sort of every few moments, really. And so one of the things that we learn in Tai Chi, I think, is that we're not slaves to that process. That physically and mentally and energetically, we're able to come back on a regular basis to that sense of spaciousness, that sense of stillness. So it becomes much more an inherent part of us. We'll still get drawn away from it, because we have lives that draw us away from it. And there's nothing inherently wrong with that. We don't lose it totally. So now this time, bring the hands back to the original position here and combining these through movements in a little sequence. Taking your time as you reach the point of change. Not rushing the movement. Perhaps just getting the sense for the changes in, particularly in the upper part of your body. Your legs doing much the same thing, but with the change from one movement to another, different parts of your body seem to come into play, different connections to get to be made, so that each exercise that we do has a great deal in common with all the other exercises, and at the same time has its own very particular patterns of movement, flows of energy within your body. And we can just gradually become aware of that. I'm deliberately not telling you what I think they should be at this point, because it's a good exercise to practice recognizing what's going on, to develop that skill of listening very deeply to what's happening within our body, which is really something that aids, I think, that process of coming back that I described, that regular return to a sense of stillness, spaciousness. So rooting down, wild goose, and parting. One more round. Keep the movement going in your hips, let your arms drop to your side, and the next time you push up, just on one side of the body, pushing up, extending out from foot to fingers. This is dragon plucks the stars from the sky, back down towards the ground, and then change sides. And seeing if there's any difference between one side of your body and another. Sometimes there is. We can be a bit stiffer on one side and another for one reason or another. One more. And then once again, just shake it. Just excuse me while I get a drink. Okay, so in those four movements that we've just done, and the little sequence, we were actively dropping our hips down and pushing up. This gives us a real awareness of the mechanics of the movement. Our hips drop, our knees bend, our feet push down into the ground, our hips come up again, our hips push our shoulders up. It's a very, very straightforward chain of movement. But we can begin to feel that internally as well. The downward movement comes about because we allow gravity to pull our hips down. So if we go back to the original position where we're not going down deeply, but we just let our hips drop back a little bit, this allows gravity, the space, to work down through our body, so that even though our hips aren't going up and down, there is still a downward movement there. But at the same time, we haven't just collapsed, or at least hopefully we haven't just collapsed to the floor. If you feel like you're about to, then do take a rest. So there is also, even though it's perhaps not so obvious, there is also a counter movement to that. It's like if you get a ball and you push it down into water, you'll feel the pressure of the water pushing the ball back up. So this posture, this sort of higher posture, shall we call it, hips are dropping back, allows us to find a sense of equilibrium, a balance between the downward movement and the upward movement. We can feel held there. Again, like being in water, when you just find the right sort of spot in the water, the weight's dropping down, but the water's pushing you up, and you can find a sense of stillness there. And we use this for the next two exercises. So we maintain that sense of a movement and energy within the body. Bring your hands to your sides. So to the side of your hips, palms up, and then bring your hands up, push up just a little bit above your head, and then back down. And then push up. So an intention here is to use those movements, those energies within the body, the downward pull of gravity, the energy coming up from your legs. It's safe to assume that they're constants. It's almost like standing between two streams of water going in opposite directions. And you have a stick in your hand and you choose which of those to throw the stick into, and that defines which way the stick is going to travel. So here with the expanding movement, we're looking to build on that feeling of a push up, and on the contracting movement, allowing gravity to pull our elbows down to bring us back to the original position. So this becomes part of our intention. These are always intentional movements. There's an intention to make that connection with the different parts, different movements through the body, and an intention to, if you like, to pick one as appropriate. And then as we start to feel the expansion coming up through the body and move with that, turning in the center part of your body, and that changes the direction of travel for your arms. Turn the other way and back, and then facing forwards and pushing out. So this is pushing in 4 directions. So we could label the expanding energy as yang, and the contracting energy as yin. So yang and yin. And in any particular circumstances, Tai Chi seeks out a harmony between those 2 directions of movement. Those 2 aspects of the direction isn't necessarily the best description. And that can vary according to the circumstances that we're in. But in this exercise, it's a nice regular pattern. So we can begin to just understand how we might be able to quite deliberately and quite intentionally work with those patterns. Pushing in 4 directions. In Tai Chi, we're told that the movement is rooted in the feet. This is yielding to the pull of gravity, allowing our center of gravity to drop. Transmitted through our legs, as we can see here, obviously something is coming up through our legs, and directed, guided, shaped through the center part of our body, the area between hips and waist. Expressed through the upper part of it. So we recognize the significance of, again, that central part of the body, that area that we're bringing our hands back to on a regular basis. And this becomes a really important point of focus for us. From there down into the ground is the area of the body that we bring our thoughts back to when we want to once again reconnect with that feeling of stillness and spaciousness. Now, your arms drop down and again on one side, expanding. And this time letting the movement push your arm out so it swings up and then straight down the center line of your body. Try not to lift your shoulder as you swing your arm up. Try and feel your shoulders somehow dropping down. And then, if it's comfortable for you at this point, once again, turning in the center of your body. Once again, that refocusing, almost a realignment of your attention to include areas of our body that we often overlook very easily. And then changing sides. Noticing again any difference between one side and another. Remember, we're not stretching. At the top of the movement, the biggest expanse of the movement, and we can add the turn now. We want to feel that there is still space for movement within the body. Space for that movement, space for that flow of energy to work again without straining, without fighting against our own bodies. And then let's come back and stack. And again, shake, shake, shake out. So if you're new to this, it would take a while to really develop the ability to maintain some kind of awareness of your physical center and of your feet. But with practice, you'll find the effect on both muscles and nervous system is that it becomes more accessible. You still lose it. You will still have times when you don't feel centered, when you lose the sense of the root, but with practice it becomes more natural to return to that, to just almost touch base, almost literally. For those of you who are more experienced in this, then actually it's a recollection. Oh yeah, this is what I've done before, and maybe, as I say, over the holiday period, you lost it. You know, get out of routine and things like that, and just give yourself time to actually get back to it. The next two exercises are unusual in as much as, rather than maintaining the upright stance as much as possible, we deliberately go out of line with that. So once again, just building up to that slowly. Be careful with both these exercises because they can be very strong on back and knees. And thinking of your pelvis, and tilt your pelvis forwards, push your hips back, and notice how that affects your shoulders and your head. Come back to the upright and back. I'm exaggerating this a little bit. Just go as far as you're comfortable with this. Recognizing that, again, a rotation in the center, this time a vertical rotation, has a very profound effect on your upper body. So I'm still keeping as a reference point, that awareness of the line going through the middle of my body. Notice here, as my hips go back, my head goes forwards, I still have that sense of equilibrium. But if I did this, then forward, so if it's just, if I lean forward, it doesn't do that. I have to have the hips going back to maintain that. That's important for both of these exercises. This time, as your hips go back, also drop down a little bit. Let your hips drop back, let gravity pull your hips back to bring your head upright and then push up. So rather than straining against gravity to come into an upright stance, let gravity itself do the work of pulling your hips down and drawing your head up. Coming up in a nice smooth pattern, and then bringing our arms in to the movement this time as you push up. This is called rowing a boat in the middle of the lake. Hips go back, arms are swung. Dropping back, coming to the upright position, pushing up, expanding and contracting. Coming back to this position of equilibrium and then starting the whole process over again. Again, I'm doing this quite big, so hopefully you can see some of the mechanics of the movement, but be very careful. I would only go as far as my back is comfortable going. Remember, you want to leave that little bit of space for that feeling of movement within your body at the end of the movement. One more of these. And then let your hips drop back. Bring your hands in front of you. Turning from side to side, noticing how that moves your hands for you. And the middle of our movements, turn to the left. Now push your hips back. Let that push you forwards. Turn again. Let your hips drop down. Turn back to the center. And take that in the other direction. This is called polishing the table. So that you can see what's happening with my hips. I'll turn around, turn, hips go back, swinging around, hips dropping down, coming back to the center. Once again, allowing gravity to do the work of actually pulling my hips down and hence bringing my head upright. And this is one of the things that leads to the characteristic posture and quality of movement that we find in Tai Chi. That we're not straining, struggling against the pull of gravity or against our own bodies, simply to move. One more on each side. Good, and then just stand. Shake it. So the degree to which we can cease to struggle against the pull of gravity is the degree to which we can actually begin to release some of the tightness and restrictions on movement within the body to develop this sense of spaciousness, which in its turn allows the movement, allows the flow of energy. It's a very straightforward formula. So any notion of cultivation of energy in one way or another, or developing flowing movements, is dependent upon that sense of releasing in our hips. It may involve going down deeper, as it does sometimes in Tai Chi, or it may just involve maintaining a feeling, particularly within our hips and lower back and buttocks, of not straining to push up all the time, to actually allow gravity to pull us down. It's like if I use again this pole this time, and as I tilt forward, I'm going to do this. Now, if somebody were to come along and push on the end of the pole, and it did this, the pole would do that. So, or push or to pull on it, and so if the pole is integral to my posture, it will bring me upright. Less need for strain, less need for tightness in areas like back and shoulders. Not all the tension is going to go away. It's not the only reason for that, but it is a very fundamental thing. So it's one of the things that's very important to us in Tai Chi. Now, from the parallel stance, turn one foot out, and that's an angle I would invite you to play around with. Step forwards with the other foot, toes pointing forwards. The stance is somewhat square. It's like your feet on the opposite corners of a square, so about the same in length as the width. And once again, just beginning to transfer your weight. And again, I would remind people more experienced in this, that there is this moment of settling in each leg, of releasing, not necessarily knees bending more, but of releasing in hips, buttocks, knees, that gives us this stronger feeling of to push up the responsiveness from the legs. And it's that push from the legs that we direct into movement, again, through the center of the body. So again, I use the image of riding a bicycle or indeed driving a car, that the energy to move comes from the rooting down. And when we feel that movement, we then guide, we direct, we steer the movement. And if you like to think of it in those terms, the handlebars, the steering wheel, is that center part of the body. So for many reasons, bringing your attention back to that central part, feeling that central part is the part of your body that drops to the ground, is a massive benefit to us. When we move from the ground like this, we're far more likely to maintain the posture. Imagine if you had a pile of books in front of you and you wanted to move them, then if you just pushed on the top book, you would only move the top book, and it might even collapse the pile. If you move the bottom book, then the whole pile is more likely to stay there and to move. So when we can start to move from lower down, then we begin to once again maintain posture, maintain that potential for movement in movement. So it's a very simple idea, but it does require, my experience anyway, it requires constant practice. This time, as you go into your back foot, raise your front toes a little bit, so more of your weight sinks down in back foot. Now you can have the front foot turned out, settling down, push your back knee forward so that your back heel comes up. And so gradually, by doing this, you bring your upper body more in line with the leg that's carrying the weight, what we would call in Tai Chi the full leg. And eventually, almost all of your weight is actually flowing down through that leg and foot. And that's when we can settle in and bring the empty foot in, step back, plant the foot down, move the weight back, and step in. There's just I'm pausing slightly. I'm getting to here, and then I'm bringing in that little moment. I'm just aware of my posture, and I ask the question: is it appropriate to bring my foot in? And this encourages a return to a useful posture, and also reminds us that this quality of stillness is such an integral part and so necessary for the movement. I sometimes describe these moments as being like a comma in a sentence. It doesn't stop the flow of the sentence, but does give it some kind of, in some ways, some kind of meaning. Try that with the other foot forwards. So this is a shorter than normal step, and yet if we can develop that sense of, not, it'd be nice if we could maintain the root and the stability and the posture the whole time, but recognizing that in that transition from one foot to another, quite often we would go slightly out of line, but rather than rushing ahead and getting more and more frantic, we actually break that cycle and give ourselves an opportunity to return to, again, the sense of stillness, spaciousness in mind and body, and the stability and the mobility that comes with that. And so, again, this is something that we can practice and begin to cultivate, not just in the Tai Chi practice, but as we move around in our daily lives. Raising toes and heel. In that sense, you could argue that all of these movements are like a laboratory. You develop, scientists would develop a medicine or something, or maybe maybe develop a robot in a laboratory in ideal conditions, and then it's taken out into the big wide world. And it's obviously going to be more difficult at that point, but you've got the starting point of having discovered these principles and worked with these principles in the laboratory. And then take a few steps through, either forwards or backwards, depending on where you have the room. There's a little wobble then. Didn't quite get it, but this is again is something that we learn to do. It's happened to me so often that when I do get these little wobbles, this has become an instinctive response. Rather than, I'm going to change direction now. Quite often our response to that little bit of a wobble is to start flapping our arms around, and everything goes wrong then because our weight comes up. So this is again is a very useful skill to develop, because when we go out, when we walk down the shop, we trip over a pavement, could be a slope in the pavement, could be a bit slippery. So knowing how to come back is a really important thing. Shake out. Now, have your right foot forwards. Start with your weight in your back foot and move your weight forwards, let your arms swing through with you, and then as you come back, turning, drawing your arms across your chest, your belly. The version of the exercise, fisherman cast the net. Weight moves, center turns, arms follow. Good. Try that on the other side. So left foot forwards, starting in the back foot, coming through, arms following, shoulders following, movement in your center of the body, and that in its turn directly linked with the movement in your legs and the transfer of your weight and the positioning of your feet, the stance that you're taking. So now, this time, you can turn the front foot out a little bit, go forwards or backwards, let the arms swing over and then down in front of the hip. As they come up again, bring the empty foot in, step, push. And you may find that you're able to just raise the leg a little bit. If that's a bit nerve-wracking, that throws you off, then leave the foot down. But remember, if you do want to raise your knee, then it's important that you feel that your hips are dropping back to sort of balance out the lifting up. I'm going to change direction. And then bringing your feet down. Shake out. Good. Rub your hands together. Tapping over. Over your head and neck. And one shoulder. Follow that up with your arm down the inside, your arm up the outside. Changing sides and then into the lower part of your back. Out around your hips. Light on your belly. Onto the upper part of the chest. So I've mentioned several times this idea of coming back to something. I think in Tai Chi, it's acknowledged and in fact required that we're not navel gazing, shall we say. We're not, no, this is a very practical art. It was originally a martial art. So an awareness and an engagement with what's happening around us is very important, but inevitably that compromises that sense of being centered, of being still, of being rooted. So we learn from yin to yang, to yin to yang is the pattern of the movement. And this last exercise, Embrace Tiger, Return to Mountain, emphasizes that process of returning. So from the parallel stance, just sinking down, pushing up. And then from here on, it's all about the coming back in, arms coming around to hold the ball, elbows dropping, bringing your hands in, hips dropping down and just taking your time here, letting your hands drop and pushing out again, expanding and contract. And we recognize that actually this process of expanding outwards, reaching outwards in one way or another, it's quite naturally balanced by the inward movement, the yielding to the pull of gravity, which in its turn will just change to the outward movement. This is part of the background philosophy that yin will lead to yang, yang will lead to yin. So rather than thinking that we have to make some kind of extra effort or special effort to come back, it's more about just recognizing the potential for that cycle of gravity drawing us inwards and downwards, and that sense of a movement to our legs from the ground, helping us to expand outwards. One more round. And Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and joining in. As always, if you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you.